Hello, and welcome to another episode of Lore and Crime, a podcast where we dive into the shadowy depths of history, where true crime and chilling events inspire dark fictional tales that will keep you up at night. There are cities built with stone, and then there are cities built with silence. Prague is the second. A place where shadow bleeds into mortar, and towers lean as if listening to secrets long buried. In the waning years of the 16th century, under the rule of Emperor Rudolf II, the city became a crucible for the strange and the damned. Alchemists walk openly in the streets, their hands stained with mercury and dreams. This is a tale of kings and madmen, of angels conjured in smoke, of glass vials blooming with flesh, of a hidden tower and two men, John Dee and Edward Kelley, who claim to speak the language of heaven and may have opened the gates of something else. I write these words by quivering candlelight, as I have finally left the silent walls of old Prague. Late is the hour, but I have no rest while this tale presses upon my trembling pen. In the gloom of endless nights, I was privy to secrets that no mortal tongue should utter. Hearken now my tale, for I am but an English scribe, sent by Her Majesty, Queen Elizabeth I, to the court of Rudolf II, Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. My mission was secret and perilous, to witness the strange alchemical arts practiced in the Emperor's city. The path to Prague was long and uncertain, through deep forest haunted by dusk's shadows and roads slick with autumn rain. My ship from London creaked under shifting winds as if lamenting the fate that awaited me. We made landfall at Rotterdam after 3 days of churning seas that left my stomach in perpetual revolt. I had never been so grateful to see solid ground, though my relief was short-lived. The Netherlands, with its maze of canals and waterways, presented its own trials. I secured passage on a merchant barge, laden with spices and cloth, its Dutch captain eyeing my sealed royal documents with naked suspicion. "Prague," he muttered, spitting into the brackish water. "The Emperor's city? God's mercy on you, Englishmen." Along the canals we glided until we reached the mighty Rhine, that ancient artery of commerce and conquest. The waters grew darker as we ventured deeper into Germanic lands. By the time we reached Cologne, the air had grown colder, carrying whispers of the approaching winter. I knew the river would not serve me further, for my destination lay beyond its winding path. In Cologne's shadow, beneath the spires of the great cathedral, I bartered passage with a caravan of merchants, bound for the eastern reaches of the empire. My gold, and perhaps the Queen's seal, bought me a place in a weathered carriage that smelled of tallow and wet wool. We departed at dawn, the carriage wheels cutting deep into mud as our small procession ventured eastward. "Stay close," warned the caravan master, a grizzled Saxon with a scar running from eye to jaw. "These roads are treacherous in more ways than one." How right he was. By day, we navigated rutted paths that threatened to snap our axles. By night, we huddled in roadside inns where strangers spoke in hushed tones of Rudolf's court and its dark reputation. Tales of sorcery and unnatural science mingled with more mundane gossip. The Emperor's madness, his obsession with the occult, his collection of curiosities that defied God's natural order. We pressed onward through the heart of the empire, our convoy growing smaller as merchants peeled away to their respective destinations. The roads worsened as we entered the forested highlands. Twice we broke wheels on hidden stones, and once we were forced to shelter for 3 days in a decrepit monastery, while torrential rains turned the path ahead into impassable mud. Nuremberg soon rose before us, its walls and towers standing defiant against the gray autumn sky. I spent 2 nights there, replenishing my dwindling supplies and gathering what intelligence I could about the Emperor's current temperament. To reach Prague before winter fully descends, counseled an aging merchant who traded in Bohemian glass for 30 years, take the Elbe. The roads east are watched by brigands and worse things. I heeded his advice, departing Nuremberg with a somber company of traders, bound for Dresden. The journey overland was grueling, our horses struggling through paths choked with falling leaves and early frost. When at last the Elbe came into view, its grey waters winding down the mist-shrouded valley, I felt an unsettling mixture of relief and dread. The river barge I secured passage upon was captained by a taciturn Bohemian who crossed himself whenever the Emperor's name was mentioned. His vessel, low and flat-bottomed, carried precious Meissen porcelain and several crates of instruments bound for the Emperor's astronomers. The captain grudgingly offered me a narrow corner beneath a tarpaulin, where I huddled with my journals and a cipher box. "The Elbe will carry us to the Bohemian frontier," he said, his voice barely audible above the river's constant murmur. "From there, God's mercy alone will guide you." For several days we drifted with the current, the wooded banks sliding past like the edges of a dream. The air grew colder, and morning mist clung to the water until midday. I spent hours watching the changing landscape, noting how the settlements grew sparser, the forests darker. At night, strange lights sometimes flickered among the trees, and the crew would fall silent, averting their eyes. When I, at last, beheld the spires of Prague rising under an iron sky, crowned by the alabaster silhouette of its ancient castle, I felt a chill of foreboding. Beneath the citadel's shadow, something dark stirred. I stepped ashore in Prague, as if waking from a fevered dream. It was early November, and the clammy mist clung to the air, wrapping the ancient city in a shroud of spectral grey. Across the black, whispering Vltava river, I saw Prague Castle rise from the fog like a slumbering leviathan, its spires and turrets barely glimpsed through clouds of smoke and shadow. The wet cobbles of the old town glistened beneath my boots as I wandered down narrow, twisting lanes, where flickering lantern light danced upon weathered gothic facades and the stone faces of saints and demons alike. Each breath fogged before my lips, carrying the smell of burning peat and old wet wood. The river's chill in my bones, a hush broken only by distant church bells and the drip of rain from slate roofs. In the half-light, I imagined furtive figures, astrologers and alchemists, cloaked in velvet and shadows, chanting arcane incantations and plotting hidden knowledge. Prague, under Emperor Rudolf II, felt half-buried in shadow, a city of uneasy miracles and muted portent. Every crumbling gargoyle and carved relief seemed to hold a secret, its stones alive with Renaissance mystery and Gothic horror, as if the very walls knew more than mortal men. Prague was a place unlike any I had known, a dreaming labyrinth of crooked gables and blackened towers, where time seemed to pool in stagnant corners. The Vltava flushed sluggish and dark beneath Charles Bridge, as if drugged with old wine, while the lanterns above cast trembling halos on the mist-slick stones. Danger seemed to await in every corner, and the inhabitants kept mostly to themselves. They said Rudolf, ravaged by a pox of the blood, had sunk into unreason, that the sickness had turned his face from the world of men, and that he poured his vast coin into strange pursuits. Gold had flowed like melted wax through the veins of the city, drawing to it all manner of mystics, astrologers, and secret men who trafficked in forbidden symbols and whispered to glass vials in candlelight. It was said the Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, half dead and half divine, sought the Philosopher's Stone not for riches, but for deliverance, for a way to unmake death, or perhaps remake himself. And in the cloisters and crumbling halls where scholars once taught, now flickered blue flames, and shadows danced to rites the church dared not name. The city breathed with something old and trembling, as if Prague itself was a vessel for the alchemy of souls. The church found itself powerless in the face of the situation, its hands tied by the very limits of its influence. What were they supposed to do? Was it conceivable to dispatch inquisitors to reprimand the emperor, the highest authority in the land? The notion was as audacious as it was unthinkable, and the clergy could only watch from the shadows, their whispers of discontent swallowed by the grandiosity of imperial power. Their hollowed halls echoed with the silent acknowledgement of their impotence as the church grappled with its role in this unfolding drama. It was on the third night of my stay where a sealed missive arrived at my lodgings, bearing the hidden mark of the English crown, a thorn wrapped in laurel. The letter summoned me to the quarters of Dr. John D., a man I knew by reputation alone. He was ostensibly a merchant of rare books, in fact, working as an alchemist for Emperor Rudolf, but in truth, Her Majesty's most accomplished natural philosopher and secret officer in these lands. I was directed to seek him not at his known residence, but at his hidden laboratory near Neredova Street. The lab was concealed within the highest chamber of the Faustine Tower, a forgotten spire jutting from the ancestral manor of a Bohemian lord in the lesser town. As I crossed the Charles Bridge before dawn, the stone apostles loomed through the mist like silent sentinels, their hollow eyes following my passage. The bridge seemed to stretch endlessly before me. At the end of the bridge, a hooded figure materialized from between the shadows of two decrepit buildings. Moving with such stealth, I nearly stumbled backward in alarm. A slight man, with a face like parchment stretched over bone, he offered no name nor greeting. "You are the Englishman," he whispered, his breath visible in the chill air. "Follow me and speak not." His eyes darted nervously to the shadows, as if expecting pursuit. I clutched my cloak tighter about my shoulders and obeyed, trailing this spectral guide through a maze of narrow passages barely wide enough for a man's shoulders. The servant moved with the ease of a rat in its den, leading me through archways where stone angels with eroded faces kept their eternal vigil. We emerged suddenly into a small courtyard, enclosed by towering walls that seemed to lean inward, as if conspiring to trap what little moonlight dared to enter. In the first corner on the left of the courtyard stood the Faustine Tower, ancient and terrible in its jagged ascent towards the heavens. Its stones seemed to pulse with a faint glow, as if some inner fire smoldered within the very mortar. "The doctor awaits above," my guide whispered, opening a small door and pointing to a narrow wooden staircase that spiraled within the tower. 66 steps to wisdom or madness. Count them if you wish, but do not tarry. The night has eyes in Prague, and not all are friendly. I gazed upward at the dizzying spiral, my throat suddenly parched. I ascended the worn stairs of the hidden alchemical tower, where secrets were kept hidden behind iron and spellbound locks. High above the city, shadows danced strange shapes in the flickering candlelight. Near the top, a heavy, oaken door groaned on its hinges as it opened, as if reluctant to disturb the sanctity within. A dank hush fell upon me, thick with the odor of brimstone, mercury, and old parchment. I stepped into the dim, shadowy room, where the figure of Dr. John Dee emerged like a specter from the darkness. He was a tall, slender man, with a long, flowing white beard that cascaded down to his chest. His high forehead, illuminated by the flickering light of two ornate brass lamps, revealed eyes that were deeply set on a full mystery. He wore a scholar's doublet made of rich, deep velvet, its texture as opulent as it was antiquated, and his pale eyes fixed on me with an intensity that sent shivers through my very bones. Though his words of greeting were few, the silence between them felt heavy, and his unwavering gaze was both inviting and intimidating in its relentlessness. With a subtle hand movement, he gestured for me to step further into the enigmatic space. The tower's interior was a cathedral of darkness. Rows of shelves with ancient tomes loomed overhead, bound in cracked leather and sealed dust. Strange symbols were scrawled along the wooden walls and beams. Candles all around burned low, their smoke coiling in wiry spirals to the rafters. A strange warmth pulsed from an iron stove at the center of a large, longer chamber to the left of the entrance, throwing grotesque shadows against the walls. Dr. D moved among the artifacts with the ease of one long accustomed, touching tomes and instruments as if greeting old friends. He motioned me to a worn table where a crystal file lay upon open parchment. Beside it lay an obsidian mirror and a brass balance.
"Our work,"
he murmured,
"is not alchemy of elements alone, but of spirit."
His voice was low and soft. I dared not speak, content to only watch and breathe the stale air, thick with secrets. Moments later, the door clanged open once more. Sir Edward Kelley entered. He was small of stature, but large in presence, trimmed with confidence and that uncanny air of otherworldly knowing. His red short beard contoured his face, concealing the cruel smile of a man who knows more than he should. Rumors of his missing ears were confirmed by the low cap he wore, the flaps hiding the missing flesh.
"Welcome, good sir,"
he intoned with a grin sharp as a dagger.
"You have journeyed far to witness our work."
Dr. D and Sir Edward exchanged a nod heavy with meaning. I felt their glances as though a silent brand was searing on my flesh. Between the two of them, I was an instrument of importance, though whether for salvation or damnation, I dared not guess. In the days that followed, I became an involuntary apprentice to their wild experiments. Dr. D's library bore grimoires of hermetic lore, and Kelley's black arts became a daily spectacle. Kelley was a man of contradiction and concealment. I observed how he moved through the laboratory with a dancer's grace, spinning tales of angelic visitations with such conviction that even I, a man of letters and natural skepticism, found myself half believing. His eyes, sharp as a falcon's, missed nothing, and his tongue was quicksilver, adapting to each new listener with uncanny precision.
"The Emperor himself has commissioned our next great work,"
he boasted one evening, swirling a goblet of Bohemian wine.
"His Imperial Majesty recognizes true genius where the common rabble sees only mystery."
Dr. D nodded solemnly, but I caught the flicker of doubt that crossed his weathered features. Later, when Kelley departed for one of his frequent private audiences at the castle, D confided in me.
"My associate's talents are considerable,"
he admitted, his voice barely audible over the hiss of chemicals bubbling in glass retorts.
"but I fear his ambition outpaces his wisdom."
I studied Kelley from afar over the following weeks, noting how he transformed himself to suit his audience. With D, he was the humble scryer, eyes downcast as he claimed to channel angelic voices. With visiting nobles, he became the confident master of arcane arts, promising transmutation of base metals with such conviction that purses opened like flowers to the sun. before the Emperor himself, I heard, he adopted an air of mystical servitude, a vessel for higher powers that spoke directly to Rudolf's desperate hopes for eternal life. The man wore his personas like a player changes masks upon the stage, yet beneath all facades lurked something calculating and cold. I caught glimpses of it when he thought himself unobserved, a sneer of contempt when examining the Emperor's latest gift of gold, or a flash of rage when a servant failed to move quickly enough at his command. One evening, as sleet rattled against the tower windows, I chanced upon a folded parchment that appeared to have slipped through a crack from Kelley's chamber above. My curiosity overcame my caution, and I unfolded the yellowed sheet to find a half-completed letter in Kelley's distinctive hand, addressed to an unnamed patron in London.
Should the arrangement prove profitable, I can assure you that certain documents bearing Her Majesty's seal might be procured through my position with the good doctor.
I recalled then the whispers that had followed Kelley from England, how he had once stood in the pillory at Lancaster, blood dripping from his mutilated ears onto his shoulders. The punishment for forgery was well known across England, the cropping of ears to mark the criminal for all to see and distrust forevermore. I had dismissed such tales as mere gossip, the sort that follows any man of sudden prominence. Yet now, with this treasonous evidence between my fingers, I understood why Kelley kept his cap pulled low even in the stifling heat of the laboratory. I refolded the letter with care and hid it, my mind racing. That night, sleep eluded me as I pondered what I had discovered. Kelley was playing a dangerous game, selling secrets to multiple masters while pretending loyalty to each. His disfigurement was not rumor but reality, a permanent reminder of his duplicitous nature that he concealed beneath fabric and falsehood. One morning, I witnessed a feat they deemed miraculous. Sir Edward carefully boiled a batch of mercury in an iron cauldron and then poured it into a cold crucible. Flames licked the mixture, and from the frothing metal he coaxed forth small beads of pure gold that gleamed like captured stars. It was hailed as a triumph for Emperor Rudolf's coffers, yet the gold proved far less lasting than pride. I watched as they struggled to keep it, only for it to vanish again, turning into worthless dust despite their efforts. All around us were the instruments of their crafts. Alembics hissed and dripped, retorts glowed red-hot over burning coals. Crucibles lay blackened with the fire of a dozen sins. Arcane symbols danced in dust and soot. Pentagrams and the hermetic seal of the Ouroboros carved on the worn oaken table. Often, Kelley consulted me with calculating eyes, asking my blood type as if I were another reagent. One night, under the dim glow of a flickering candle, I saw as he leaned closer to the glossy surface of a polished obsidian mirror. His breath fogged the glass as he whispered secrets, his voice barely audible in the stillness of the night. The dark heart of the mirror seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, and as he stared deeper into it, he swore he saw ethereal figures, angels he called them, moving gracefully within its mysterious depths. At times, the alchemist chanted prayers, not of saints but of angels. Latin verses, punctuated by strange syllables, fell from their lips, as if Dr. D had discovered lost gospels in the stars. Kelley would invoke names, Uriel, Sabriel, and angels whose names twisted like serpents on his lips. Candles guttered, and shadows on the walls flitted like living things. I confess, I trembled. Was I witnessing divine revelation, or a pageant of devils masquerading in holy robes? And yet, as those fevered nights, a part of me was enthralled by Kelley's fervor. I half believed in their sacred cause. He often boasted that we stood on the cusp of godhood. Only through their alchemy could man earn the angel's inheritance. To Emperor Rudolf's lust for gold and eternal youth, they held all the promise of immortality. Around us, Prague's legends swelled. The city had become the occult capital of the Holy Empire. charged with secrets born of dust and fire. In that crucible of magic and madness, I had to wonder, could mortals truly defy the laws of creation? Kelley often spoke to me as if I were not servant but equal.
You have courage few men possess,
he said one night, handing me a glowing brass vessel to feel its warmth.
Soon, the Queen's enemies will tremble.
He clapped me on the shoulder.
Be brave, scribe. The beginning is painful, but the end is our triumph.
I forced only a weak smile. Fear was easier to hide than faith. The following day, a tremor passed through our hidden sanctuary. A messenger arrived at dawn, his face ashen, bearing a letter sealed with the imperial crest. Dr. D's hands shook visibly as he broke the wax.
His Imperial Majesty requires our presence immediately,
he said, voice hollow with dread. The summons brooked no delay. Within the hour, we found ourselves traversing the castle's labyrinthine corridors. Led by guards whose face betrayed nothing, the throne room doors swung open to reveal Emperor Rudolf, his once regal countenance now a mask of fury.
4 years,
he bellowed, spittle flying from his lips. His hefty frame, draped in ermine and velvet, seemed to expand with rage.
4 years of gold from my treasury poured into your crucibles. And what have you shown me? Parlor tricks and empty promises.
Rudolph's face had turned a shade of crimson that seemed almost supernatural in its intensity. The court fell silent as a tomb. Every courtier and attendant froze in place. I shrank back against the marble column, desperately trying to become invisible.
Your Majesty.
Dr. D began, his scholarly composure crumbling.
The great work requires...
Silence!
The Emperor slammed his jewel fist upon the armrest.
I have given you laboratories, rare elements, assistance, and more gold than most nobles see in a lifetime. And what have I received in return? Smoke, whispers, worthless trinkets.
Kelley stepped forward boldly, his cap slightly askew.
Imperial Majesty, we stand at the precipice of success.
I care not for your precipice.
Rudolf roared, rising from his throne with surprising vigor. His fingers clutched at the air as if strangling invisible demons.
30 days! You have 30 days to produce the Philosopher's Stone in its true form. Or by God's wounds, you shall both be flayed, and your remains outcast from this land.
The Emperor swayed suddenly, his face draining of color. 2 courtiers rushed forward to steady him as he collapsed back into his throne. His breathing came in ragged gasps, and I noticed for the first time the yellowish tinge to his skin, the tremor in his hand that no royal dignity could disguise. The man who commanded armies and kingdoms was being devoured from within by some malady that neither physician nor priest could vanquish.
30 days!
He sentenced, gathering his strength.
Or exile!
We were escorted from the throne room in grim silence, guards flanking us like pallbearers at a funeral not yet performed. The winter air bit cruelly as we crossed the castle courtyard, but I scarcely felt it through the numbness of terror that had settled over me.
30 days?
Dr. D muttered, his breath forming ghost-like wisps before his face.
Impossible. We need at least 3 months to...
We have 30 days.
Kelley interrupted, his eyes alight with a fevered gleam that I had come to recognize in fear.
And we shall succeed, or die in the attempt.
Upon our return to Faustine Tower, a frenzy of activity erupted that surpassed anything I had witnessed in my time with the Alchemists. Kelley dispatched messengers to every corner of Prague, bearing sealed purses to secure exotic ingredients, saffron and ambergris, powdered unicorn horn, though I suspected it was narwhal, mercury distilled 9 times, and stranger substances with names I dare not pronounce. Dr. D, withdrew to his private chamber with ancient texts, emerging only for meals that went largely untouched. The laboratory became an inferno of perpetual activity. Glass vessels shattered under extreme heat, their contents hissing and bubbling like the cauldrons of Hades. Acrid fumes filled every corner of the tower until my eyes streamed and my lungs burned with each breath. Servants collapsed from exhaustion and were immediately replaced. 3 times, small fires erupted that threatened to consume the entire structure. I recorded everything in my journal with trembling hands, knowing that I was witnessing either the prelude to a miracle or the desperate flailing of condemned men. One night, deep in the tower's laboratory, behind tattered velvet drapes thick with candle soot, we passed the night among hushed chants and bubbling vials aimed at creating life itself. Dr. D paced anxiously as Kelley tended to a great glass vessel, half filled with bitter earth and shimmering quicksilver. Within the jar drifted half-formed limbs and misshapen flesh, a creature halfway between man and dream. I begged Kelley to end its misery, but he smiled as if proud of his horrid craft. Soft Latin chanting rose from his lips as he invoked the golem of Prague and the power of sacred names to infuse clay with soul. With careful hands, he poured thick wine and even egg into the murky solution, declaring it nourishment for an unholy birth. In that stagnant jar, I saw a face pale as bone, drifting near the surface, eyes glimmering softly with a hint of consciousness, yet cold and lifeless. Kelley felt its pulse and crowed of triumph. Dr. D crossed himself in dread. They said it was the birth of Homunculus, a creature formed of dust, sperm, and spirit. I felt its stolen heat on my fingertips, though it had no mouth to speak. For hours we watched that sad half-life grow and then begin to rot, each atom withdrawing with putrefaction. Finally, it gave a last, weak gasp of wordless agony. Its body turned as black as pitch, oozing oily ichor. Kelley flung the pitiful thing back into the mud.
"Not yet,"
he muttered, cursing its weakness. Lightning flashed outside, and thunder laughed in reply. Symbols and circles had been scrawled all around us. Pentacles of fire and salt were laid on the sand floor to contain unseen horrors. Vials of mercury, jars of eagle's blood, and crushed bones covered every surface, filling the air with the acrid stench of sacred death. I realized we were far beyond science now. We had become thieves of creation. By flickering candlelight, I thought I saw long shadows move, as if the spirits we toyed with danced around us mockingly. Kelley grew more manic with each passing hour, his eyes bloodshot and wild as he muttered calculations and adjusted proportions. Dr. D became increasingly withdrawn, spending long hours in silent contemplation before his books and scrolls. The deadline loomed over them like the sword of Damocles. On the 28th day, as twilight cast long shadows across our chamber of secrets, Dr. D approached me as I huddled in my corner, documenting the day's failures. His face was haggard, deep lines etched into his forehead like ancient runes.
"A moment of your time,"
he whispered, beckoning me to follow. I trailed him into an adjacent building, down a narrow staircase I had never noticed before, leading to a small antechamber. The room was bare, but for a small writing desk and a single stool. A brass lamp cast eerie shadows upon the walls. Dr. D closed the door behind us and pressed his ear against it, as if to ensure we were truly alone.
"Tomorrow,"
he said, his voice barely audible,
"we attempt the final transmutation. Kelley believes it will succeed."
"And you, Doctor?" I ventured. His eyes met mine, hollow with exhaustion and something deeper, resignation perhaps, or the terrible clarity of a man who has seen beyond the mortal veil.
I believe we court forces beyond our comprehension,
He replied.
and I fear the price of such knowledge.
Dee gave me a sealed letter for the Queen's eyes only, marked with 2 circles and a half triangle resembling a 7.
Whether our endeavor succeeds or fails does not matter anymore. You need to deliver this for me.
I took the letter, and we made our way back to the tower. The time came at last for the one ritual Kelley had promised. The chamber was transformed into an altar. In the center lay a golden plate inscribed with zodiac symbols, surrounded by burning candles that cast long, dancing shadows. Flasks of phosphorescent liquid and the crushed remains of rare stones covered every surface. Dr. D stood tall and solemn, reading from a heavy grimoire in faded Latin. Kelley's voice grew sharp and wild. He ordered us all to drink a strong potion from a vial he produced. Then, suddenly, he drew a steel dagger and cut the palm of my hand. A trickle of blood fell into the center of the golden plate. A sudden flash of pain lanced through my mind as the ancient symbols drank the sacrifice. Dr. D intoned the final words, his voice cracking with awe and fear. The candle sputtered. A wind stirred within the sealed tower. A faint chorus of voices, like children singing backwards, seemed to rise from the walls themselves. The golden plate began to glow with a terrible light. Smoke spiraled from the crucibles. On the plate's surface, amidst ash and spilled mercury, something coalesced. A small, huddled shape rising from blackened cinders. It resembled a child shrouded in dust, with bruised skin and cloudy eyes staring through the darkness. It opened a mouth and let out a wail, half howl, half sob, that echoed in my very bones. The light flared into a blinding flash. I reeled backwards and then ran. Behind me I heard Kelley scream. Triumph or terror, I could not tell. I fled blindingly through the smoke-filled lab, the fires of the ritual guttering behind me. The staircase spun around me as I tore through its passage, heart pounding, my ears still ringing with the final inhuman cry I heard from the altar. The last image that seared itself into my memory was Kelley's face in the candlelight, wild eyes looking into the plate as though he had witnessed the face of God, or the abyss. I escaped into the damp dawn beyond Prague Manor as the tower behind me smoldered. My body bore burns and cuts as trophies of my flight, but worse was the fire that burned inside my soul. I left for England the very same day. Upon arriving to London, I realized I was no longer the man who had left. I walked London streets by day, cloaked in silence, and fumbled at the bedpost by night, haunted by that unearthly cry echoing forever in my ears. My hair has grown streaked with white at the temples, and often I find fresh scars on my palms as if made by an invisible blade. The winds of fate had blown me home, but what they carried was ash and terror. I write this now with a stranger's hand. By day, I haunt the halls of Whitehall, yet in dreams I see Prague's tower blazing against the night sky. My eyes have grown bloodshot, and I find myself once more gazing at the stars for answers. I dare not pray for comfort, for I have learned that some powers answer those prayers. What rose from the ashes of that night was neither angel nor demon, but something far older, something primeval. I end this confession uncertain whether I survived the nightmare or unleashed one. Judge me if you will, but know this: I carry its whisper in my very blood. If you ever feel a cold breath against your neck when no breeze blows, remember that some doors, once opened, never truly close. Signed, Christopher Marlowe. And so ends this tale of shadows in stone corridors, of kings who sought eternity, and of men who claimed to speak with angels. The Emperor is long dead, Dee and Kelley vanished into smoke and legend, but in Prague, the stone remembers. And sometimes, if the air is still, you can almost hear the angels speaking backwards. If you ever find yourself wandering beneath its foggy spires, look carefully. The past has a way of pressing through the present, like breath on cold glass. Thanks for listening. If you enjoy this story, it means the world if you follow, subscribe, or whisper a review into the void. It will help other curious souls find their way here. And if you know someone who enjoys strange history and stories with a chill, send them this episode. You never know what doors it might open. Until next time, for another episode of Lore and Crime.